The storm arrived without warning. One moment the sky was a dull gray. The next, dark clouds swirled overhead like something torn from a nightmare. I had been sitting at my desk rehearsing answers for a job interview scheduled the next morning, an opportunity I desperately needed, when a deep rumble of thunder shook my windows. Within minutes, rain hammered violently against the roof. The wind howled like it was trying to rip the entire neighborhood from the ground. I closed my laptop, suddenly uneasy. Power lines swayed dangerously. Trees thrashed back and forth. The storm felt personal, like the universe was testing me just when I was trying to get my life together. Then it happened. A sharp crack, a bright flash, and everything went dark. My lights flickered once more before dying completely. I groaned, reaching for my phone. Dead battery, of course. I stumbled toward the breaker panel, hoping it was a simple outage, but halfway through the hallway, a cold drop of water hit my forehead. Then another. I looked up. My ceiling bulged in one spot like a balloon filled with water. A small but steady leak trickled down, splashing onto the floor. Panic shot through me. I rushed to grab a bowl, then a towel, then another container. Water spread across the floor faster than I could manage. My shoes, a folder filled with documents for tomorrow's interview, and my only decent suit jacket were all getting wet. No, 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 come on, I muttered as the situation worsened. Rain pounded mercilessly overhead, each drop echoing inside the house like a taunt. Another crack of thunder shook the walls. That was when I heard knocking. A firm, rapid knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. The neighborhood usually shut down during storms. I nearly slipped running to the entrance. When I yanked open the door, I saw a silhouette soaked from the rain, dripping coat, flattened silver hair, boots splashing on my porch. It was Mr. Calder. "Your lights are out," he said, voice raised over the wind, "and your roof is leaking fast." Before I could say anything, he lifted a large tool bag I hadn't even noticed he was carrying. "Where's the breaker? And the leak?" he asked without hesitation. I let him inside, embarrassed by the mess, but too overwhelmed to care. He examined the breaker first, fingers moving confidently despite the dim light. A moment later, the house hummed faintly back to life. Not fully restored, but enough to power a lamp and calm my nerves. Then he turned to the ceiling. "That patching," he muttered. "Storm just pushed it past its limit." Without waiting, he climbed onto a chair, tools in hand. He sealed the crack temporarily, redirected the water flow, and helped me gather everything that was soaked. Despite his age, he moved with surprising steadiness, focused, calm, determined. When we were finally done, the worst of the storm had passed. The leak had stopped, the lights stayed on, and most of my belongings were saved. "You shouldn't be here in this weather," I said quietly, gratitude swelling in my chest. He shrugged. No one should face a storm alone. Those simple words hit harder than the thunder outside. That night, the man the neighborhood misunderstood had rescued me. Again. And I realized I wasn't the only one who needed saving. The morning after the storm, the world felt strangely calm. The sky was clear, the air smelled fresh and clean, and sunlight poured through my windows as if trying to erase the chaos of the night before. I had barely slept, partly from worry about my interview, partly from replaying the memory of Mr. Calder standing in the rain, tools in hand, determined to help me when he didn't owe me anything. I managed to salvage my documents, dry my clothes, and get myself presentable. Somehow, despite everything, the interview went well. I answered confidently, held my ground, and felt, maybe for the first time in a long time, that I was getting back on my feet. A small spark of hope followed me all the way home. But nothing could have prepared me for what waited on my return. As I approached my house, I noticed Mr. Calder standing on his porch. He wasn't watching the street as he sometimes did. He was waiting for me. His posture was tense, like he wasn't sure how I would respond. When our eyes met, he gave a stiff nod. "How'd it go?" he asked. "I think it went good," I said, sounding more surprised than confident. He gave a quick grunt of approval. "Come with me. Got something to show you." Confused but curious, I followed him inside his dimly lit home. The scent of sawdust and wood polish wrapped around us immediately, warm, familiar, comforting. His workshop, once a maze of unfinished sculptures, looked slightly cleared today. Tools neatly arranged on the table. It felt like he had prepared for this moment. He walked toward a large object draped with a cloth. When he turned to face me, there was a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. "I saw a photograph in your sketchbook. I didn't mean to snoop, but it fell out while I was fixing it." The mention of the photograph made my heart tense. It was a picture of the house I grew up in, a small 2-story brick home with peeling paint, wild bushes, and a wooden swing my father built when I was little. That home represented everything I had lost and everything I still secretly longed for. "I remember," I murmured. He took a deep breath. "I hope you don't mind. I made something." Then, with both hands, he lifted the cloth. My breath caught. Underneath was a hand-carved wooden replica of my childhood home. Every detail was perfect: the crooked shutters, the uneven porch steps, the swing gently curved as if caught mid-motion. The textures were so precise, I could almost feel the rough brick and the smooth wood just by looking at them. It was beautiful. It was personal. It was a memory brought back to life. "I thought maybe it'd remind you where you came from," he said quietly, eyes lowering as if afraid he had crossed a line. "Or remind you that you can start again." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, my chest ached, and tears gathered before I could stop them. I wasn't just holding a carving, I was holding a piece of myself that he somehow understood. "Mr. Calder," I whispered, voice trembling, "this is the most thoughtful thing anyone has done for me in years." He looked away, pretending to fuss with the tool, but I saw it, the slight curve of a smile he probably forgot how to make. In that moment, I realized this wasn't simply about a gift. It was about connection, healing. Two lonely people silently reaching out to each other. And for the first time since moving here, I didn't feel alone. In the days that followed, something shifted, subtly first, then unmistakably, between me and Mr. Calder. What began as cautious interactions grew into a steady rhythm of companionship. The neighborhood still whispered its usual rumors, but the man that I had come to know was nothing like the shadowed figure they described. I had glimpsed the truth behind his closed curtains, a gentle soul, grieving but hopeful, hidden beneath years of silence. We began spending afternoons together. Sometimes I visited his workshop after work. Sometimes he knocked on my door asking if I had eaten. And sometimes we simply walked around the neighborhood discussing little things, weather, memories, projects. He wasn't talkative, but when he spoke, his words carried weight. Gradually, his house grew brighter. He opened the curtains, he fixed the broken porch light, and even begun tending his garden again, humming softly as he trimmed the hedges. People noticed. Some stared, others whispered. A few tried approaching him for the first time in years. He always glanced at me first, as if checking whether he was ready. Eventually, he began nodding back, offering short greetings, slowly re-entering the world he willingly abandoned. One evening, while watching him carve a delicate bird in his workshop, an idea formed in my head. There's so much talent here, I said. People should see it. Kids, families, anyone who wants to learn. He paused mid-carve. See what? This, I gestured around us. Your work, your skill, your patience. You could teach people. You could bring something to this neighborhood no one else can. He stared at me long enough to make me nervous. Then he frowned gently, as if overwhelmed. Been a long time since I taught anyone. So teach me first, then we'll go from there. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded, and that nod sparked something remarkable. Within a month, we cleared space in his garage and transformed it into a small community workshop. Nothing fancy. When I first moved into Willowbrook Court, I imagined a fresh start. Quiet mornings, peaceful evenings, and the chance to rebuild my life after a year that had nearly broken me. I had left behind a stressful job, a relationship that ended painfully, and a city that never let me breathe. This small neighborhood, with its tree-lined sidewalks and houses painted in gentle colors, felt like the calm I desperately needed. Most of my new neighbors greeted me warmly during the move. The Johnsons across the street brought over a basket of muffins. The elderly couple next door waved cheerfully from their porch swing. But one house remained still and silent, the faded beige house on my right, belonging to Mr. Calder. I saw him only once that day. While unloading the last box, I felt someone watching. I turned and noticed an older man standing at his front door, his posture stiff and his expression unreadable. He had a rugged look, thick eyebrows, an unshaven jaw, and eyes that held a distant heaviness. He didn't smile or introduce himself. He simply nodded once, then retreated back inside, as if the world might follow him. Later that evening, while setting up my living room, I heard two neighbors chatting outside my window. "You're living next to Mr. Calder now. Strange man. Never talks to anyone." "Yeah. People say he's lived alone for years. Keeps everything to himself. No family, no visitors." "And those sounds at night," he whispered. "Creepy, if you ask me." The conversation faded, but their warnings lingered in my mind. I told myself not to judge him based on rumors. Everyone has their reasons for keeping to themselves. Still, I couldn't deny the house gave off a feeling of loneliness, as if time had been frozen inside it. Days passed, and I rarely caught even a glimpse of him. His curtains were always closed, his porch light never turned on. Yet, strangely, his yard remained immaculate. Trimmed bushes, swept walkway, not a leaf out of place. I wondered if he tended it at dawn when no one was watching, or if he simply preferred life in the quiet hours. Then one night, everything changed. It was nearly midnight when a sharp thud jolted me awake. I froze, listening. The sound came again, louder this time, from Mr. Calder's house. Then came the unmistakable noise of something heavy scraping across the floor, followed by hurried footsteps moving back and forth. I sat up, heart pounding. Was he in trouble? Had he fallen? The noises were too chaotic to ignore, too unusual to dismiss. I stood near my window, staring at his darkened house, torn between going over and minding my own business. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the noise stopped. The house went silent, eerily silent. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, or that something was being hidden. That night, I realized my quiet neighbor wasn't just mysterious. He was a puzzle waiting to be uncovered. The morning after the strange noises, I woke up groggy and unsettled. My mind kept replaying the sounds from next door, the thuds, the scraping, the hurried footsteps, and the way everything suddenly went still. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe he was rearranging furniture. Maybe he dropped something heavy. Maybe he simply had trouble sleeping, like I often did. But even those excuses felt weak. To clear my head, I brewed coffee and stepped outside to breathe in the chilly morning air. The neighborhood was quiet, dew still clinging to the grass, early birds hopping across driveways. I yawned, stretched, and nearly tripped over something sitting neatly on my front doorstep. A small, wrapped package. I froze. It wasn't there the night before, I was sure of that. The paper was smooth brown craft paper tied with twine, neat and deliberate, as if whomever left it took their time. No name, no note on the outside, just a quiet, mysterious gift waiting for me. For a moment, I thought one of the friendly neighbors had left a welcome present, but the package looked too old-fashioned, too carefully wrapped to be from any of them. Still half asleep, I picked it up and brought it inside. I placed it on the kitchen counter and stared at it for a long moment. Curiosity finally won. When I tore the paper open, my breath caught in my throat. Inside was my sketchbook, the one I hadn't seen since moving day, the one I thought had gotten lost during the chaos of unpacking. It looked different, though. The bent cover had been straightened, the torn edges reinforced with delicate, almost invisible glue lines. The corners were smoothed, the pages carefully realigned. Someone had gone through a surprising amount of trouble to restore it. A small handwritten note fell out. Thought you could use this. That was it. No name, no explanation, just 7 simple words. But I recognized the handwriting immediately. I had seen the same shaky, slightly slanted letters on the rusted mailbox next door. C-A-L-D-E-R. A quiet warmth filled my chest, mixing with curiosity and something like guilt. I had spent days listening to neighborhood rumors about him, how unfriendly, strange, or distant he supposedly was. Yet he had found my lost sketchbook and taken the time to fix it with extraordinary care. I imagined him staying up late under a dim lamp, aligning pages, smoothing creases, glue brush in hand. Suddenly, the strange sounds last night made a little more sense. Maybe he wasn't struggling. Maybe he was crafting. I couldn't ignore the gesture. It was too thoughtful, too personal. For someone everyone claimed never talked to anyone, he had just reached out in the most unexpected way. I stood there holding the restored sketchbook, feeling a gratitude I couldn't quite express. Something told me I couldn't just slip a thank you note under his door. This deserved more. So I made a decision. I was going to knock on Mr. Calder's door myself and try to understand the man who lived in silence, yet whose kindness spoke louder than words ever could. I stood in front of Mr. Calder's house for almost 2 full minutes, sketchbook tucked under my arm, trying to gather the courage to knock. The beige paint looked even duller up close, weathered by seasons of neglect. The windows remained shut behind thick curtains, giving the impression of a house that had stopped living a long time ago. Still, after everything he'd done for me, walking away felt wrong. Finally, I raised my hand and knocked. For a moment, there was no response. I wondered if he wasn't home, or worse, maybe I was disturbing him. But then I heard slow, steady footsteps approaching from inside. The door creaked open just a few inches, revealing a cautious eye peering at me. Yes? His voice was gravelly, unused, as if it hadn't spoken to anyone in days. I held out the sketchbook. I just wanted to thank you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You fixed this. It must have taken hours. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he slowly widened the door. just enough for me to see him fully. He seemed older than I remembered, shoulders hunched, eyes tired, but surprisingly alert. He stared at the sketchbook like he wasn't sure whether to acknowledge it. "Wasn't much," he muttered. "Didn't want you thinking you lost it forever." "It means more than you know," I said softly. Something in his expression shifted, not a smile, but a faint softening. He exhaled through his nose as though debating something. "Come in," he said finally. I stepped inside cautiously, unsure what to expect. But what I saw stopped me cold. The living room had been transformed into a workshop. Wooden sculptures lined every surface, shelves, tables, even the floor. Some were small enough to fit in a palm, birds in mid-flight, miniature cabins, delicate roses carved with lifelike petals. Others were larger, half-finished animals frozen in motion, or human figures captured in quiet moments, reading, thinking, dreaming. The air smelled of sawdust and varnish, an oddly comforting and warm scent. Sunbeams filtered through tiny cracks in the curtains, illuminating floating dust particles like glitter. My eyes widened. "You made all of these?" He shrugged, as though such talent meant nothing. "Gives my hands something to do." I walked slowly, taking in each piece. The skill was breathtaking. Every detail was carved with devotion, precision, and emotion.